there.
Okay.
Hi there. That was wonderful. Thanks, Heather and Haley. So powerful, powerful messages from the both of you.
Yeah. Awesome. So Peg, I've got a question for you just to get things going here.
Sure.
So Peg is works with seniors and families to help them navigate through the healthcare system and also to navigate the retirement home experience as well, and choose a retirement living that's that meets people's needs at the time. But a question that I get all the time is when do you know it's time to get more help for your senior parents?
Yes, great question. I don't know if there's ever the right time to find help. I think there's a lot of factors you should consider, especially if you're in your own home, if you're living alone or living with your adult children. It really comes down to a few things. First and most important is isolation, feeling alone. I think the pandemic has really done that to a lot of us, all different ages, especially our seniors, and a lot of them that had lived alone were isolated in their homes. So a lot of it could be isolation and depression and feeling alone, and showing the physical signs of that, as well as the mental signs. So maybe not properly eating or taking medications or becoming forgetful. I mean, these are all signs of depression and isolation. So that's one big factor. Just the responsibilities of a home ownership. I mean, if you're still living in the family home of 50, 60 years, it's just two-story home with, 4 beds and 2 baths. I mean, and potentially your washroom is on the second floor and your laundry is in your basement. That could be tough, especially if your needs have become more physical and you can't climb stairs or don't feel as safe to go up and down the home. And then just, as I mentioned about the home and how large it is and being able to keep up with the chores, from the housekeeping to the cleaning, the laundry. And like you said, Scott, the maintenance of your lawn. I mean, getting outside and, taking care of that.
Sure.
So a lot has to do with that. Also is the memory decline. There's a lot of different reasons why somebody's memory is going to decline. Like I said, depression, maybe not taking your medications properly, not eating properly, or there's maybe something underlying that is making somebody become more forgetful and having a decline in their memory. And the other big one is, more of that acute physical need. Maybe you had a recent diagnosis where your needs need to be met in more of an environment where there is a medical team there that can help and look after you. So having support going somewhere, for instance, or bringing home and having nurses come in and take care of you if your needs are going to be ongoing. So I would say those are kind of some of the major factors. The other one I get often too is falls. Falls attribute from many things. Again, I feel like I'm a broken record, but definitely, not eating correctly, not taking your medications, even the hazards in your home. If your home is not safe, if you have throw rugs or poor lighting or cords lying around, that is another reason why there's falls. Or again, something else is underlying, some other medical condition. So those are probably some of the biggest factors why somebody would consider making a decision if they need to consider retirement living or even bringing in care.
Right, sure. I know in my parents' case, they moved into a retirement home and about 4 years ago, and it just came to light that I think my sister came in one day and there was medication. Both my mom and dad's medication was all over the kitchen counter and was all like, kind of mixed up. And it was obviously that that they were taking each other's medication. And I think that ultimately had an effect too on their judgment and capacity and energy and well-being. And it just was really obvious it was time for them. But those are all really great points and things that I've experienced too as a realtor. When the people come to me and say like, what are we going to do? What's the main difference in like retirement home versus long-term care? Like, what's the options there?
Sure. Well, there is 3 main differences when it comes to retirement living, which is the private sector, and long-term care, which is the public sector. The biggest part is the level of support. Retirement homes are, it's a kind of a fee for service. You pay for the care that you need. but you don't need the around-the-clock 24-hour nursing supervision. Long-term care is when your needs, your daily needs have significantly increased,
Sure.
and you need more medical monitoring. You need more of that oversight, or even if your dementia has increased and you can't remain in a retirement residence where your needs have become greater. So overall, the level of support is one of the biggest factors. The next factor is the whole move-in process. We're all hearing online about the wait lists and, the
Yeah.
Bill 7 that's being talked
Sure.
about right now. So when it comes to retirement living, you have a choice. You have a choice of when and where you want to move, versus the long-term care, the government funded homes. Basically, it's up to the government to decide when and where you decide to live. And unfortunately, with, seniors in our hospitals and waiting in beds because they don't have a place to go, maybe because their home environment is not safe and they're waiting for a long-term care bed, they're being asked to pay either $400 a day to stay in the hospital, or to be basically told to go to a long-term care home that is roughly 150 kilometers away from their home residence. So, the move-in process is a big factor when it comes to retirement and long-term care. And the other one, which is most important, is the cost structure.
Sure.
Retirement homes is completely private pay. It's out of pocket. So there is no subsidies when it comes to retirement homes in Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the long-term care, which are either partially or fully subsidized based on your income and your physical needs. So that is sometimes another factor why somebody has to consider long-term care and not retirement living because of financial reasons.
Right. Sure. Now, is long-term care, is that like free? Is that 100% free, or is there still a pay element to that?
Yeah, there is a pay element. It's based on your income. So whatever, income that you get per month would supplement what the government supplements. So every scenario is different, and what your fee you would be paying, let's say, based on what your monthly income is versus what the government would supplement. So every case is different. And once you meet with somebody through the home and community care support services, they'll explain to you exactly, if you make, a certain amount of money per month, how much the government would supplement.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Now, the question that comes out of that is, what about home care versus, like retirement living?
Yeah, good question. And I get that all the time. With my expertise in working in retirement for 20 years, I know that it's not the end all be all. And I know that home care is a great alternative if one is not ready to move into retirement or just not at all.
Mm-hmm.
A lot has to do with, having that village that Heather mentioned, that support system around you. And it's important to really rely on that and to get all the information you need so you can stay at home. Number one, is your home, is it even suitable for you to actually age in place in safely? Do you need to make the necessary modifications to stay in your home? As I mentioned before, climbing to the second story to go to the washroom or using your laundry. So maybe you need to put a washroom on the main floor, or putting a stair lift in your home. And the other part is cost. The government does provide some support in the home, and everybody qualifies based on your physical needs. So there can be some hours approved per week by a personal support worker to come in, but the rest would be up to the client themselves to pay out of pocket. And the cost of bringing home care in, if it's several times a day or, overnight a live-in, it can cost, at least 3 times more than going into retirement home. So again, it's just some of these things you need to consider. And if you don't have an adult child, available, or they're working, they live afar, you may have to consider either paying for home care or looking at your options for retirement. The biggest, as a huge believer in retirement living, the one reason why I tell people that you should consider it is the lifestyle. You go
Sure.
in because you want to be around people, your peers, you want to have, be with others that, that you can, spend your time with, get your
Sure.
3 meals a day, get your care looked after. You have supervision in the home 24/7. And you really get to, you can let go all of those chores and responsibilities that you
Sure.
had to manage when you lived in a home. So every scenario is different. And every time I talk to a client, I really look at the pros and cons of every situation and see what makes sense.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, there's not really one right direction or the other, but there's a lot of things that we need to consider before considering home care
Yeah,
versus.
sure. And that was when my father, he's 93 now, my mom's 92, and when they moved into the retirement home a couple of years ago, that was one comment my dad made, was that to me, was that he felt relieved because he didn't have the responsibility anymore. And that for him was a big deal,
Yeah.
and he now he's like, he loves the community part of it. He's like, he knows everybody. He organizes, like, he's always been an organizer. So he's like doing like music events, and
Nice.
he's just really engaged in in there, and it was the right thing at the right time for him, for
Good.
sure.
I love hearing those stories. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
great. Awesome.
And if the food's good, I even go in and have a meal sometimes, and the food's pretty decent. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
good.
what's the average base rate for a one bedroom in a retirement home?
Well, there's two things that kind of determine the cost is the size of the accommodation
Right,
and the level of care. So
right.
on average, a one bedroom in an independent living environment can start around 4,500 to 5,000 a month.
Okay.
And again, it depends on the size, location. The other thing too is if it's a couple that's moving in, there's always a second occupant fee that's always on top
Right.
of that base rate. So
Sure.
that also varies because it can vary based on a meal plan or what's
Sure.
included. So that could be anywhere I've seen as low as 300, but as high as 1,000 extra
Sure.
per month on top of that 45
Right.
5,000. And then the level of care. So if you, I always encourage my clients to apply for the home and community care support so they can get additional help from a PSW to come in, which can help lower the cost of it for care because care can
Right.
get quite expensive.
Right. Right. Is that something that that the health system is willing to provide, like a PSW, or is that like available for anybody, or is that something that you have to qualify in some way for it, or if they have time, or how does that,
Yeah.
how does that
So
work?
yeah, I mean, everybody, can apply. They do look at a lot of factors for sure. But a lot of it is more, do you actually need a personal support worker? Do you
Right.
physically
Right.
show that you need to have support where the
Right.
government will provide so many hours per week
Right.
for those services? And you can receive those services if you live in the home in the community, or if you live in a home in an apartment building, or even in a retirement home. So you're able to receive those services. Though I did hear, and I was told that the Peel regions, parts of Peel region, they unfortunately, once you are at a certain level of care, the home and community care is not allowed to go into a retirement home
Oh, I
there.
see. Okay.
So it does vary by region, but for the
Yeah.
most part, it is need-based.
Right. Yeah, I think they were pretty busy during, like, kind of during the pandemic. I think they were just swamped.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're like now, but I know that they were just overworked, I would say, from what I could
Yeah.
see.
Oh, very much so. Absolutely. It's getting a little bit better.
Yeah. What are the levels of care you can get in a retirement home? I think
Sure.
you touched on that a bit already, but
Yeah, I think some people might be actually surprised the levels of care you can receive, and I think it has evolved over the several years because more retirement homes are being built with providing all levels of care. At a time, it was just providing more independent living services. So really to start from the very independent is senior apartments, or independent living as they call it. So this is where these are, a 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom accommodation. You can potentially have a full kitchen, and you may receive some like minimal support if it's housekeeping or maybe having your linens and towels laundered for you, having access to programming, activities, those kind of things. But you're still independent. You don't have any needs at that point.
Right.
The next level down from there is called independent supportive living. So again, everything that I just discussed, but you potentially might need some support in maybe managing your medications, or you need help with getting a shower. And then in some cases, a full kitchen may not be in your accommodation because you'll have access to 3 meals a day in a dining room. And then from there, you'll go into assisted living. Assisted living, in many cases, is a dedicated floor or a section of a residence. And that's where you can receive assisted living with your activities of daily living, such as dressing, grooming, bathing, toileting, escorting to and from, transferring. So really, a lot of retirement homes have increased the care they can provide, so which is very similar to what you can receive in long-term care. The only downside of it is the cost. So it can get quite costly if you are receiving complete care. From assisted living, from there, then you have memory care. Memory care is a secured environment for somebody that has a diagnosis of dementia.
I see.
Yeah, so either it's a floor, a wing of a building, or there is a few within the Greater Toronto area that are a freestanding memory care residence, and they specialize in providing care at all different stages of the disease.
Right.
And this area, as I mentioned, is secure. The staff is specially trained on how to work with a resident that has the disease, especially if there's any behaviors, or if they sundown and exhibit where they need constant maybe direction assistance or cueing reminders. And it's a great environment really that you can stay in until the end of life. And they can bring in additional services for that.
Right.
And one other level I always like to add, because a lot of caregivers burnouts, as Heather was mentioning, is something called respite care.
Right.
Many retirement homes across Ontario offer respite care, and what that is it's meant or has been designed for caregivers that need a break, that need rest. And it's now has been used in many other different, capacities, where if a caregiver needs a rest, or they need to go and get away or go travel, their loved one can actually stay in a retirement home.
Oh, that's awesome.
Or some places are a minimum of a week, but I'm seeing on average anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, where you just have your loved one pack a bag, and they will provide a furnished suite for you, provide the meals, housekeeping, laundry, and your loved one's looked after, so the caregiver can have a break. And the other reason folks are considering respite stays is if they're having a surgery and they know they are getting their hip done, for instance, and they know that they cannot climb those steps of stairs in their home just yet. So they'll go somewhere in between just to get a little bit stronger. So when they're feeling ready to go, then they can go back home. So it's a short-term stay where you don't have to really give a notice, other than just to say, hey, my plan is to stay here for 30 days.
Right. Awesome. Boy, that's a great alternative to, all around for both the caregiver and anybody that needs that help as well. And so that kind of leads into a question, and I know the decision to do something can take a long time, and knowing when it's time to go is important. We discussed that, but what are the biggest kind of objections that people come up with when about retirement living or long-term care? Yeah,
there's a lot.
They're mixed up, probably, yeah.
So my favorite is those are a lot of old people in there, and they need a lot of care.
There's something wrong with everybody in here, right?
Meanwhile, my 96-year-old client is like, that's a big one. I would say is the age. I think there's still a stigma kind of attached to going anywhere, because I think it still is considered an institutional environment that you would see in old movies, for instance. But back to what I was saying about retirement homes, they're being built now, and they've evolved in regards to what they offer and just the overall social component of it, where they are really truly targeting the younger senior now. So you will see seniors as young as, the minimum age is 65. So I've seen a lot younger based on the need or the
Sure.
reason why somebody moves in. So it's never a right age to move in. I think it's just when you know it's time.
Sure.
So that I would say that's a huge one.
Sure.
Um, and they're expensive. I mean,
Sure.
very expensive. So one thing that I go over with my clients is I have a cost comparison sheet, and I'm sure Heather probably has something similar where you can really compare the cost of living at home versus living in a retirement home or long-term care.
Okay.
And some people are pleasantly surprised. I
Yeah.
mean, yes, it's still expensive or more expensive potentially than living at home, especially if your home
Sure.
is already paid off. But if you look at, some of the other factors of, food is included, utilities are included, taxes are included, maintenance is included, anything really, everything is kind of included into retirement versus having all these separate bills of having to pay living and, maintaining home
Sure.
ownership. So expensive is the biggest, and and letting them know that there are some support and some programs that people can apply for that can maybe potentially help cover any additional expenses.
Right.
Another one is losing independence. A lot
Okay.
of seniors feel that they're going to move in and they're no longer independent. Everything is going to be taken away from them. They can't continue what they used to do at home. Like if they would like sleep in until 9, but then maybe gradually have a cup of coffee for breakfast at 10 o'clock. They
Sure.
like to read their newspaper. Some seniors feel that that's going to be taken away, and really it's going to be enhanced. They're going to be able to get to do the things that they used to do that they aren't able to do because they are, living in a retirement. They
Right.
don't have to worry about those chores that we mentioned earlier, or,
Right.
having to run out and do grocery shopping. They can
Right.
actually instead take part in programming or go on bus trips, or,
Right.
I feel that their hobbies are brought back to life once they move into a retirement home.
Yeah, sure.
And you still are living independently. You do have your own key to your accommodation. You have the privacy of a suite and a washroom. And you truly still can make the decision of what time you want to go down for a meal or what activity you choose to take part in. So it
Sure.
really truly is up to the resident who moves in what kind of lifestyle they choose to have.
Right.
And the biggest one is I'm not ready. Moving is too much to think about. I have a big
Yeah.
home. I got to downsize.
Yeah. Too
What am I
much
going to
stuff.
do?
Yeah.
I'm going to wait until the time is right. Well,
Yeah.
that's when unfortunately I get a lot of the phone calls, is when that crisis occurred,
Right.
and it creates panic for everybody involved.
Sure.
And especially if the adult child is still working and the senior was living alone and they aren't able to support or kind of step in. So it's really important to start having conversations earlier
Sure.
rather than later, just to kind of
Sure.
get an idea of what somebody's plan is when they think about transitioning into retirement. What does that look like for you? So
Yeah.
I'm always encouraging my clients to have conversations little by little,
Yeah.
just so it doesn't really intimidate anybody or make anybody feel uncomfortable.
Right. Right. Awesome. Well, those are all good points. And I know when it comes to the cost of a retirement home, quite often, if you're comparing it to living in your own home, you're getting a lot more at a retirement home because you have all the amenities. Usually there's, nice pool, gyms, kind of workout space. Like, I know some of them have bowling alleys and theater rooms and
Golf
organized events.
simulators.
Yeah, yeah. So you're kind of like kind of a nice step up for like for things to do, and that's kind of a lot of people when they retire, they're worried about what they're going to do, what am I going to do, and so there's definitely lots to offer at some of the retirement homes that you wouldn't get in your own home unless you went out.
Yep.
So Peg, if somebody wanted to get your help, what would be the next step?
Well, I'm available pretty much on any platform. I mean, I have my website, which is a little bit longer than Heather and Haley's.
Yeah, okay.
It is my full business name, is my domain
Okay.
name, but I will have my contact information, or Scott, if you can post that. Call, email, text.
Okay.
You can private message me on Facebook or
Okay.
Instagram, whatever's easier.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. That's great. Well, thanks, Peg, for your insights, and
Thank you.
much appreciated. And
Thank you.
so